And I think a lot of people are wondering what's taking so long for your office to decide either way if someone's going to get charged. Where do things stand?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in taking your time when you have time, and we clearly have time here. Getting it right sometimes means getting all the evidence, making sure you understand it. And so I get how it appears. You have video from one angle or two angles and you see what happens. But to me, there are really two things we're looking at. One is the operation of the vehicle, and the other one is the deployment of pepper spray. And it just takes time to gather all the information. And since we're using a grand jury in this particular instance, you schedule the time of the grand jury, you put witnesses in, and we'll see where it leads us. So I think we're going to turn this around pretty quickly, in comparison to other grand jury investigations I've had over my career. But that's probably why it's taking more than some people might otherwise expect.
There could be criminality in deployment of pepper spray?
Well, look, we're evaluating it. This is one of the one of the advantages of having the grand jury report legislation that I put in last year, that even if something doesn't rise,
which didn't pass,
right?
We'll talk about.
Yeah, but there's an advantage, I think, in having that kind of report ability, that even if something doesn't rise to the level of criminality, should it have been deployed? What are the right circumstances? I'm speaking very broadly now. So those are the questions that we'll be asking ourselves and asking the grand jurors to consider. So we'll see where it comes out in the end.
Do you have a timeline?
I think within the next month we'll be done. Certainly.
Okay. Yeah. Some people are also wondering, it's your focus is on the truck, and you hear pepper spray. Those are the correctional officers from Wyatt who use that. But why not the protesters? I mean, they were obstructing a roadway, and in other states, we know down in Texas, they arrested protesters for a very similar protest. So why not even consider that?
Yeah, so here's how I look at it. So you have a right to peacefully protest. What you don't have a right to do is create a hazard or danger. In this instance, you're right. Based on what I've seen, the protesters were obstructing an access, and yet police took no action to prevent them from doing that. So
well, they weren't even there.
Well, that's part of my answer, right? That there was no police action to prevent them from doing that. So there was no public threat or danger caused by their conduct, as I see it. So that's why my focus hasn't been there. Now, certainly, had different decisions been made, and access other than the individual that we're talking about here in the truck, certainly those folks could have been taken into custody or arrested. Some of them probably might have expected that, but once law enforcement steps back and says that's not the action we're going to take, then I don't think there's any reason from a practical perspective to look at their conduct here.
A woman came up to me at a coffee shop the other day and asked me, and I told her, well, we're talking to the Attorney General this week, so I'll put the question to him. She said, where were the Central Falls police that night? I think she sounded like she perhaps knows people in the correctional officers world and felt sympathetic toward them. She said, why weren't they keeping the peace? Why weren't they preventing it from getting to that point? What is your understanding at this point of the role of the Central Falls police? That was well telegraphed. The protesters had made clear to all of us they were going to be there.
Yeah, look, I think, I don't want a Monday morning quarterback, and their mission is different from mine. I think, if they were to self-reflect, maybe they would do it differently if they had to do it again. I think they had a plan. The plan kind of went awry based on the actions of one particular individual, and maybe knowing that today, maybe they would have done something different. At the time, I think you'd want to talk to them. But I think those are all fair questions, and I think that's part of what we're parsing through. And frankly, that's why it takes a little bit of time. There's a lot of decisions that were made along the way here. Not all of them may lead to charges. Who knows where that's going to end up? But there's a lot to take from this situation that can make things, I think, better going forward. And you saw that with the more recent protest, I think.